Welcome back to DAZN Mixed Martial Arts. Sean O'Connell, Dan Hardy. We're still dealing with the fallout of the Francis Ngannou to the PFL signing. Big announcement that happened last week. We had a chance to talk with Francis. The ripple effect here, Dan Hardy, has been fascinating to me because when people heard about the terms, when people heard about the big money, it got everyone's gears turning about all the big money fights in combat sports. And oddly, that doesn't always mean mixed martial artists versus mixed martial artists. It got a lot of conversation started about boxing and MMA crossover fights. John Jones, Tyson Fury started going back and forth. Francis obviously said he wants to fight Fury and Wilder and Joshua. Connor McGregor is calling out Canelo after a fashion. Tell me what you think of these crossover fights.
Some of them I don't mind. I don't mind at all. This is actually an interesting one where I feel like Ngannou's a clearer pick in some fights than John Jones. Because John Jones in mixed martial arts, of course, is fantastic. But the more rules you add in and restrict him, the less effective he becomes. Like John Jones in a boxing match against Tyson Fury, he makes no ground at all. Tyson Fury's going to walk him down and beat him up. He's too slick. He's got too good a footwork and he's too clever at that range. But, if you add in clinch work or knees or elbows, especially takedowns, of course, that's where John Jones starts to come into his strength. But Ngannou's got that power, that leveling power that, we were talking about it before we were recording. Like, if you put Francis Ngannou in there against Anthony Joshua, I feel like he has a really good chance of putting Anthony Joshua out cold. Of all the heavyweights on the planet right now that are, elite level, I feel like Anthony Joshua is the best one for Francis Ngannou to fight, and I know that he doesn't want the fight, and I think that's because he knows that Ngannou would be too dangerous to deal with for him. His confidence is not there right now. But as far as the MMA crossovers go, Canelo being called out by Connor McGregor is absolutely wild. Like, I mean, I was a few meters from it when he was fighting Mayweather, and Mayweather was being nice at points. I feel that it's safe to say, I think most people agree with that. Canelo is not going to carry Conor McGregor for 10 rounds. Canelo is going to go in there and hurt him. And McGregor has not been training in any kind of way that is necessary. What was it Michael Bisping said the other day? He needs to get off the good stuff and get back on the protein drinks and the porridge, which is oatmeal to Americans. And I just, you look at Canelo, he's an animal. He's an animal, and you say that about any of the top level boxers, really, especially the ones that are, in the lighter weight classes. Like, we've had some really good ones recently, haven't we? With Garcia and Devontae Davis, and of course Lomachenko this weekend against Haney. It's like the level of skill that they attain at that specific skill. You can't really compete with it unless you start to vary the skill sets. And that's really where the conversation gets interesting. I know that Tyson Fury did say that, he'd be keen on fighting Ngannou in a mixed rules fight, did he say, in a cage with small gloves?
Yeah. And you kind of need that, right? One of the flaws of the MMA community, even the great strikers, Dan Hardy, a great striker, acknowledges this. Like, when you're only training boxing, and you've been only training boxing since you were 6 years old, you are a better boxer than a mixed martial artist who has to divide their time between all of the different mixed martial arts. Has to spend time that you're spending boxing doing jiu-jitsu, spending time that you're spending boxing learning how to wrestle and getting their judo tuned up and all that kind of stuff. Boxers are better boxers than mixed martial artists are. If you're going to have a hope as an MMA fighter to win in a crossover match, yes, hybrid rules could be something, but if you're just boxing, what's the one thing you absolutely need? You need one-punch power. You need that flash knockout ability. That's why people thought that Conor McGregor might be able to beat Floyd Mayweather, because they said, man, if he can land that left hand changes things. That was true. Most of us knew he was not going to land that left hand clean, because even the best boxers in the world don't land very clean on Floyd Mayweather. That's why Francis Ngannou as a crossover fighter is more intriguing in a boxing match than John Jones, who many people think is a better mixed martial artist than Francis is. Because Jones doesn't have that shut your brain off power in either of his hands. that Francis does, right? Now, Jones, like you were saying, in a crossover rules, like a mixed rules type fight, or in a mixed martial arts fight, Tyson Fury has no shot. And all this conversation started because Joe Rogan said that on a podcast, right? And Tyson Fury got upset about it and had some things to say. Look, the only way that these debates ever are put to rest is the fights happen. And these are big money fights. Connor McGregor fighting anybody automatically is going to draw names, is going to draw dollars, is going to draw. I mean, Dan Hardy's going to be sitting ringside. That right there makes it a big night, right? John Jones fighting anybody in any discipline, going to be a big deal. Francis Ngannou doing the same is going to be a big deal. Make these fights happen. Let's put the debates to rest. I will be the first one to go out and say, man, Francis got outboxed by Tyson Fury, if that's what happened. I'll be the first one to say, Anthony Joshua looked a lot better against Francis than we thought he was going to. But let's actually see it. Put the money and the mouth in the same room and let's go.
Sometimes the money in the mouth of the same person, though, if you ask Floyd Mayweather. That's the problem. I agree. I like the idea of making these matchups, and I don't mind the hybrid rules matchups either. I mean, I keep circling back to it. You know, in the beginning, there were prize fighters and there were rule sets, and if you agreed to the rule sets and the weight and the opponent, you fought for the purse that was on the table. And most of the time, it was all or nothing as well. You know what I mean? That's something that people don't realize from the old days. If you lost, you also probably didn't eat, and you didn't have the teeth to eat either. So it was a pretty brutal way of life. But I like the idea of these crossovers. And just one other thing that we have to consider, you know, going back to the point that you were making about boxers being, you know, far more refined in their art. Like, boxing's an age-old sport. You know, people have been refining the art of punching each other in the face for a long, long time. So the people that we're watching right now, the best on the planet, you know, the Mayweathers and, you know, the Lomachenkos, the Canelos, they're standing on the shoulders of giants because they're already walking paths that have been laid out for them. Like, very few of them are inventing anything new. They often rediscovering things that have already been done at previous times. Like Gennady Golovkin is fantastic with the Ketchel shift, but you know, that was named after Stanley Ketchel because he did it before. You know, there are lots of things that are kind of recurring in boxing, but mixed martial arts is not old enough to have things that recurring yet. People have not really fully understood how to properly prepare and train for mixed martial arts. Like, I watch people training on a daily basis up and down the country and across the world, and some of the best fighters in the world. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? Like, like who's made this up? This is a terrible idea. You're going to hurt yourself, or you're going to really hurt somebody else. Like, but boxing is a far more refined sport because of the years that it's got behind it. So you take a skill set out of the skill set of mixed martial arts, and then you give it several hundred years of refinement of people, the greats that have, you know, laid the groundwork, the foundations, the Julio Cesar Chavez, the Sugar Ray Leonards, the people that have tried and tested these training methods that the greats now are still doing. Like, a lot of the work was already done for them before they stepped in the gym, and that's not the same for mixed martial arts either.
The last thing I want to say on this is, you know, Dana White was asked about some of these crossover fights and Francis's ability in his contract with the PFL to go and pursue boxing. And of course, Dana was poo-pooing that, making fun of that part of the contract, because he was saying these are not big money fights. This is not something, you know, Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather was a flash in the pan. It's a one-time thing. Then why, as soon as someone brings up a big money fight, is it immediately boxing and mixed martial arts are talking about crossovers? It's not mixed martial arts that decides, now we're going to talk about a crossover. Tyson Fury, who's made a ton of money in the sport of boxing, hears someone in the mixed martial arts space mention his name, and he immediately feels like he needs to say something. Do you know why? Because these are questions that everyone wants to see answered. So they are big money fights. Dana knows a lot more about producing fights than I ever will, but he's wrong about this. He was wrong about it the first time when he said, no, we're not going to do McGregor Mayweather. No, he's under contract with the UFC. That'll be a waste of time. I don't want to do that. Connor made $100 million from that fight. Floyd made double that.
Exactly.
These fights need to happen. If you've got the leverage, if you've got the audience, if you've got the voice, like Francis does, make it happen for yourself. Like John Jones does, make it happen for yourself. Like Tyson Fury does, make it happen for yourself. Because I want to see it. And I'll give you my $79.95 US dollars to watch it.
I totally agree. And, you know, there were some fights that we missed out on that we, you know, we never got to see. Like the one that always stuck out to me that I would have liked to have seen. And I knew if they'd have fought each other at their peak under boxing rules, of course, Roy Jones was going to beat Anderson Silva. But that was the fight they both wanted. Roy Jones expressed an interest. Anderson Silva was keen. And we ended up not getting it and ended up getting Anderson Silva having some really, really boring title defenses just because he was angry at the UFC. You know what I mean? It was like it kind of rained on everybody's parade there. No one won on that one. And even if the UFC had made no money and Anderson Silva had stepped over and gotten beaten by Roy Jones, so what? Because the best thing about being an MMA fighter, and Conor McGregor got into the ring against Mayweather with this confidence. If it's a real fight, we know whose numbers got who. You know what I mean? It's like it's the get out every day. We'll play your rules, but in a fight we win. And Anderson Silva would have taken that risk against Roy Jones and potentially lost, but we can forgive him for it and welcome him back to mixed martial arts as our champion because we know the facts. And I feel like that's why it always circles back to money. It's never about anybody's brand being affected or anything like that. It's down to who makes the money and if it's worth you know, loaning out your property, which is kind of how the UFC have always viewed its fighters.